I never thought much about history beyond the usual school lessons, until I stumbled onto something that completely turned my world upside down. Imagine this, an entire chapter of human history erased, not just forgotten artifacts or dusty old scrolls, but a whole civilization wiped clean from our records. A civilization with technology that would make our smartphones look like toys and architecture so advanced it puts modern skyscrapers to shame. And yet we're told it never even existed. I first noticed it on an old faded map I found tucked away in the back of a second-hand bookshop in York. The map showed a vast empire stretching from eastern England all the way across what we now call Russia and Central Asia. It was labeled Tartaria. Sounds exotic, right? But more than that, it was detailed. Mountains, rivers, cities, borders, all marked with the precision of a modern atlas. And then just like that, the name disappears from maps in the 1800s, as if someone hit the delete button on history. Curiosity got the better of me. I started wandering through the oldest parts of London and nearby towns like Cambridge and Bath, looking for clues. That's when I saw it. Buildings that didn't quite fit the stories we're told. Towering cathedrals with copper domes gleaming under the sun, their spires piercing the sky like giant needles. Intricate carvings so detailed, you'd swear they were made with lasers, not chisels. Star-shaped fortresses sprawling over acres, their angles so perfectly symmetrical you'd think they were laid out with GPS. Officially, these were built by medieval craftsmen with wooden scaffolding and horse-drawn carts. But how on earth did they manage to hoist granite columns weighing tens of tons without cranes? Or carve stone arches so flawless they look like they belong in a science fiction movie? I mean, did they have super-powered medieval gym memberships or what? Then there were oddities that made me pause. Some stone surfaces looked melted, warped by unimaginable heat. And in places like Oxford, entire floors of old buildings were buried beneath the current street level. Front doors that now opened straight into basements, or worse, into solid earth. Why build something so grand only to bury it? The answer, some researchers say, is chilling. These structures weren't built. They were uncovered, unearthed from beneath meters of mud and debris, then polished up and given new, fake histories. The cities weren't constructed. They were excavated. But by whom? And what happened to the people who built them? I turned to photographs from the late 1800s and early 1900s, hoping for answers. What I found was eerie. Vast cities, streets paved with cobblestones, grand opera houses and banks, all impeccably constructed, but completely deserted. The wide avenues were empty, except for a handful of workers shoveling dirt, clearing mud from building facades and digging out buried floors. No signs of bustling crowds, no lively markets. Just silence. It was like watching a ghost town being slowly brought back to life. But whose life? And where were the original inhabitants? The workers weren't building. They were digging out a past someone wanted to hide. Flipping through old newspapers, I came across reports of strange discoveries. Giant human skeletons buried in ancient ruins. Not just tall people, but towering giants, some over 10 feet tall, with massive jaws and in some cases, double rows of teeth. These remains were often found with enormous weapons, axes and swords too big for any normal man to wield. The newspapers called them myths or hoaxes, but the photographs and sketches looked real enough. And here's the kicker. After being documented and handed to museums like the British Museum or the Smithsonian, these finds vanished, lost, misidentified, or quietly reburied. It felt like someone was erasing the evidence, making sure no one could prove these giants ever existed. If these giants were the rulers of Tartaria, it might explain how they built those colossal structures, the sheer strength needed to move massive stones. But strength alone can't explain the genius behind the architecture. Those gleaming copper domes, the towering spires topped with intricate metal ornaments. These weren't just decorative. Copper is an excellent conductor of electricity, and many of these features seem designed to capture or transmit energy. Imagine a global network of wireless power stations spread across continents, all connected through these architectural marvels. What if Tartaria wasn't just a forgotten empire, but a utopia powered by free energy, wiped out by a catastrophe. Some say that catastrophe was the Great Mud Flood, a sudden massive deluge of mud and debris that buried entire cities centuries ago. It explains why so many first floors in ancient cities are now basements, buried under layers of earth. Survivors or newcomers built their lives on top of this buried world, erasing the past beneath their feet. And then came the Great Reset, the deliberate rewriting of history. The rulers of the New World claimed those magnificent buildings as their own, destroyed documents and maps showing Tartaria, and hid the truth behind layers of lies. The world wars only hastened this erasure, as carpet bombings wiped out ancient city centers, replacing them with cold, faceless buildings that deny any link to the past. So here I am, standing in the shadow of these forgotten giants, with more questions than answers. Why were these cities buried? Who were these towering rulers? And what secrets did their wireless energy network hold? One thing's for sure, history is not set in stone. It's a puzzle with missing pieces, and I'm determined to find them. But the deeper I dig, the more I feel like someone or something is watching, waiting to stop me before I uncover the truth that's been buried for centuries. And just when I thought I was alone in this, I found a clue. An old cryptic letter slipped inside a book in a Cambridge library, hinting that Tartaria's lost technology might still be alive somewhere, hidden beneath the streets of London itself. The question is, am I ready to find it? Because once you start digging, history never lets you go. The letter I found was yellowed and fragile, its edges curled like the wings of a moth. It wasn't signed, but the handwriting was precise, almost elegant, like someone trained in the art of secrecy. The note spoke of a hidden chamber beneath the city, London of all places, where relics of Tartaria's lost technology were said to lie dormant. The writer warned that the chamber was protected, not just by locks and traps, but by something far more insidious. Silence. The kind of silence that swallows whole those who pry too deep. Now, I'm no Indiana Jones. I'm just a bloke who likes history and a good mystery. But that letter lit a fire in me I couldn't ignore. So I set out to find this chamber, starting in the labyrinth beneath London's streets. The underground isn't just trains and tourists. It's a sprawling maze of forgotten tunnels, old sewer lines, abandoned stations, and shadowy passageways that even the city's oldest residents don't know about. I spent days navigating through maps and blueprints, cross-referencing old archives with modern surveys. I visited the British Museum, not for the exhibits, but to dig through their archives, hoping to find any mention of hidden Tartarian relics. On a rain-soaked afternoon, I found myself standing outside an unmarked iron gate near Clerkenwell. The gate was rusted, chained, and locked, but there was something about the worn copper finials on the posts that caught my eye. They resembled the strange antenna-like ornaments I'd seen topping those ancient domes. I swear they seemed to hum faintly in the damp air, like the city itself was whispering a secret. After some coaxing and a bit of luck with a locksmith friend, I slipped inside. The tunnel beyond was narrow, damp, and smelled of earth and old metal. The walls were lined with bricks so perfectly cut and fitted that it felt less like a tunnel and more like a hidden corridor beneath a palace. Every few feet, copper wires snaked along the walls, disappearing into strange metal boxes covered in dust and cobwebs. At the end of the tunnel, I found a heavy steel door, etched with symbols that looked like a blend of Celtic knots and electrical circuit diagrams. No handles, just a circular dial with strange runes around its edge. It reminded me of the puzzles in those escape room games, except this felt deadly serious. I fiddled with the dial, turning it slowly, and just when I thought I was about to give up, there was a low rumble, and the door slid open with a hiss, revealing a chamber bathed in eerie greenish light. Inside was a bewildering sight, towering stone pillars covered in copper coils, strange crystalline devices that pulse faintly, and what looked like a massive globe made of interlocking metal rings suspended in midair. The air buzzed softly, as if charged with invisible energy. It was like stepping into the engine room of some ancient spaceship, and then I saw her. She was standing at the far end of the chamber, bathed in the strange light, Her name was Elizabeth, Liz to her friends, and she was nothing like the dusty academics I'd braced myself for. She wore a fitted leather jacket over a dark green dress that hugged her curves just enough to catch the eye without shouting for attention. Her boots were scuffed but sturdy, like she'd walked hundreds of miles to get here. Around her neck hung a delicate copper pendant shaped like a star, catching the light and shimmering faintly. Her dark hair framed a face that was sharp and intelligent, with eyes that seemed to pierce right through me. "Looking for Tartaria?" she asked, a hint of a smirk tugging at her lips. "You're braver than most." I tried to play it cool, but my voice cracked. "I could say the same to you. How did you find this place?" She stepped closer, her boots echoing softly on the stone floor. "Let's just say I've been following the same trail you have. But be warned, this isn't just some dusty history lesson. What you're about to uncover could change everything we thought we knew about the world, or get us both killed." I swallowed hard. Somehow danger felt less intimidating standing next to her. Maybe it was the way her eyes glinted with determination, or maybe I was just hopelessly caught up in the mystery. "Ready to find out what they're hiding beneath London?" she asked, holding out her hand. As I took it, I realized this was no ordinary adventure. This was a descent into a forgotten empire, a puzzle buried beneath the city's very foundations, and a secret powerful enough to shake the world. And somewhere deep in the shadows, I could swear the walls were listening. The moment our hands touched, a subtle electric tingle ran through me, as if the chamber itself recognized us, or perhaps warned us. Liz gave me a sideways grin, clearly amused by my reaction. "Don't worry, that's just the place waking up," she said, her voice low and steady, like she'd heard it before. I wished I had her confidence. We moved deeper into the chamber, the strange green light revealing more wonders and more questions. The towering pillars weren't just stone. Copper coils wrapped around them in intricate patterns, glimmering faintly like veins of some living organism. The air hummed with a low vibration, almost musical, like the heartbeat of a machine long forgotten. Liz knelt beside one of the crystalline devices, a jagged, translucent crystal set into a metal frame, with wires snaking off into the walls. She brushed away layers of dust with surprising gentleness, revealing tiny inscriptions in a script neither of us recognized. "This isn't any language I've seen," she murmured, "but it's clearly some kind of code or schematic." I couldn't help but stare at her hands, long, slender fingers stained with dirt and copper dust, working with the care of a surgeon. My mind wandered to the stories I'd read, the Tartarian giants, the wireless energy grids, and these devices that looked like they could power a city or a weapon. There was a strange, almost seductive allure to the scene, like uncovering a forbidden treasure. Liz's dark green dress clung just so, the curve of her waist visible under the soft leather jacket, and those boots, sturdy, worn, yet undeniably sexy, echoed softly with each step she took. It was impossible not to notice, but she carried herself with a mixture of purpose and mystery that made the whole scene feel like a secret whispered between us. Suddenly, a faint click echoed through the chamber. Liz froze, eyes narrowing. "That's not good," she whispered. Before I could ask what, the ground beneath us trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling, and the humming grew louder, more urgent. The metal globe in the center of the room began to spin, slowly at first, then faster, emitting pulses of light that danced across the walls. It was as if the chamber was powering up, coming back to life after centuries of silence. I glanced at Liz, whose calm exterior cracked for just a moment. "We've triggered something," she said, "and I don't think it's happy we're here." A cold draft swept through the chamber, carrying with it a faint metallic scent, like ozone after a thunderstorm. The air thickened, charged with energy, making my skin prickle. Out of the shadows, faint lines of light began to trace themselves along the walls, geometric patterns that seemed to glow from within the stone. They formed shapes I recognized from the old maps, stars, grids, and strange symbols. "This is a map," Liz said, voice barely above a whisper. "Not just any map, an energy grid, the Tartarian network." I couldn't help but crack a nervous joke. So you're telling me we just turned on an ancient power station? Great. I hope it doesn't come with a giant robot. She rolled her eyes but smiled. If it does, we'll have bigger problems than bad jokes. As the globe's pulses quickened, a hidden panel slid open in the far wall, revealing a narrow staircase winding down into darkness. Liz pulled out a flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom, and looked at me. After you, history buff. I swallowed hard, the weight of the moment settling like a stone in my gut. Every step we took down that spiral staircase felt like peeling back layers of time itself. The air grew cooler, damper, and the faint hum followed us like a living thing. At the bottom we entered a cavernous hall lined with massive stone blocks, each engraved with scenes of towering figures wielding weapons and controlling strange devices. The giants from the legends, no doubt. Their eyes seemed to follow us, carved with such detail it was almost unsettling. Liz stepped forward, tracing a finger along one of the carvings. These aren't just stories, she said. They're warnings. A sudden sharp crack echoed through the chamber, and the ground shook violently. Dust and small stones rained down, and a distant rumble grew louder, like the city above was waking up to something dangerous beneath its feet. We need to get out, now, Liz urged, grabbing my arm. As we raced back up the stairs, the humming crescendoed into a roar. The heavy steel door slammed shut behind us with a deafening clang, cutting off the light and sealing us in darkness. I fumbled for my flashlight, heart pounding like a drum in an empty stadium. Liz's hand found mine, steady and warm, grounding me in the chaos. And then, just as suddenly as it started, the noise stopped. The chamber fell silent again. Too silent. Did we just wake up a sleeping giant? I asked, voice shaking. Liz's eyes gleamed with a mix of fear and excitement. We might have just opened a door that was never meant to be opened. Behind us in the pitch-black corridor, a faint pulse of green light flickered, like a heartbeat waiting to explode. I realized then that this was no ordinary discovery. This was the beginning of something much bigger, something ancient, something alive, and somewhere above, the city carried on, oblivious to the secret stirring beneath its feet. The darkness pressed in around us like a living thing, thick and heavy, swallowing the beam of my flashlight almost immediately. Liz's grip tightened on my hand, a lifeline in the blackness. I tried to steady my breathing, but every instinct screamed that we were no longer alone down here. Stay close, she whispered, voice barely audible over the pounding of my heart. There's a way out, but it's not what you expect. I swallowed hard and followed her carefully, the uneven stone floor slick with dampness beneath my boots. Our footsteps echoed softly, a rhythmic beat in the cavernous underworld. The air was cool but smelled faintly of burnt copper and something else, something metallic and ancient, like the breath of a forgotten god. As we moved deeper, the faint green glow from the chamber above faded, replaced by a strange phosphorescent light emanating from the walls themselves. Strange veins of copper and crystal shimmered beneath translucent stone, pulsing gently in a hypnotic rhythm. It was like walking through the veins of a colossal living creature, the arteries of a sleeping giant. Liz paused and pointed to a series of intricate carvings along the wall, figures entwined in what looked like a cosmic dance. Tall beings with elongated limbs manipulating spheres of light and energy, connected by arcs of shimmering lines. This is their story, she said softly. Not just rulers, but keepers of the world's lifeblood, the energy that powered their cities. I squinted, trying to decipher the meaning. So this energy network wasn't just for power? It was something more? Exactly, she said, voice low and intense. It was a global system, a web of living energy that connected everything. And it was fragile. Suddenly, a distant rumble echoed through the tunnels, a deep, resonant growl that vibrated through the stone. The walls seemed to pulse in response, and the light flickered erratically. My stomach twisted. Sounds like we woke more than just memories, I muttered. Liz gave me a wry smile. Welcome to Tartaria's heart. We rounded a bend and entered a vast underground chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. At its center stood a colossal monolith, carved from a single piece of granite, covered in copper filigree and strange crystalline inlays. It hummed with power, sending ripples of energy through the air that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. Around the monolith were scattered remnants, ancient tools, twisted metal fragments, and shards of glass that gleamed like stars. It looked like a cathedral dedicated to technology, a holy sanctuary of a forgotten science. Liz stepped forward, brushing away dust from a copper panel embedded in the monolith. Symbols lit up beneath her fingers, glowing with an eerie blue light. "This," she said, "is the core, the control center of the network." I couldn't help but joke, trying to mask my awe. "So pressing the big shiny button here probably isn't a good idea, huh?" She laughed softly, but her eyes were serious. "No, but what if someone else finds this place?" "What if they do?" The thought sent a chill down my spine. If this was the heart of the Tartarian energy grid, what happened when it stopped beating? Did the collapse of this system cause the Great Mud Flood? Or was it the other way around? Before I could ask, a sudden sharp noise shattered the silence, a metallic clang echoing from deeper within the tunnels. Liz's head snapped up, eyes scanning the shadows. "We're not alone," she whispered, her voice tense. From the darkness emerged figures, silhouettes moving with unsettling precision. Dressed in dark, utilitarian uniforms, their faces hidden beneath sleek helmets adorned with strange symbols. They carried equipment that looked both archaic and futuristic, a bizarre blend that made me question reality itself. "Who are they?" I breathed. Liz's jaw tightened. "History's enforcers, the ones who rewrite the past by erasing those who remember it." Panic surged through me. The legends of secret societies guarding the truth suddenly felt all too real. These weren't just explorers or archaeologists. They were hunters, sent to silence anyone who dared uncover Tartaria's secrets. The figures advanced, their footsteps muffled yet inexorable. Liz grabbed my arm. "Run!" We sprinted down the corridor, the walls seeming to close in as the hum of the monolith faded behind us. The chase was relentless, the darkness alive with the threat of capture. I glanced back once to see the leader raise a device emitting a blinding pulse of light. An electromagnetic weapon designed to disable, not kill. The air crackled as the pulse swept past us, and my vision blurred. Somewhere in the depths of London's forgotten underworld, the secrets of a lost empire stirred, awakening forces determined to keep the past buried forever. And as we fled, I knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. My lungs burned and my legs ached, but adrenaline pushed me forward as Liz led the way through the twisting tunnels beneath London. The metallic echoes of our pursuers faded behind us, replaced by a tense, suffocating silence that made every footstep feel like a drumbeat in an empty cathedral. We burst into a narrow passage lined with ancient bricks, slick from centuries of damp. Liz's flashlight flickered, casting jittery shadows that danced like ghosts on the walls. She muttered something about faulty wiring, but I wasn't paying attention. I was too busy trying not to trip over my own feet. Finally, we reached a rusted iron ladder embedded in the wall. "This'll get us up," Liz said, urgency sharpening her usual calm. I grabbed the rungs, the cold metal biting into my palms as I climbed after her, the tunnel narrowing beneath our feet. At the top, a hatch groaned open, spilling moonlight onto our faces. We emerged into a forgotten courtyard behind a crumbling Georgian townhouse, its brickwork darkened by time and neglect. The night air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain and the distant hum of the city that never truly sleeps. Liz exhaled, her breath visible in the cold. "We can't stay down there. They'll keep hunting." I glanced around, the moonlight revealing ivy crawling up the walls and broken garden statues half swallowed by weeds. "But where do we go from here?" "If they want to erase the past, what chance do we have?" She smiled, a hint of that mischievous spark that first drew me in. "We don't just run, we fight back, with knowledge and with allies." I raised an eyebrow. "Allies? Like who? Secret societies? Ghosts of the past?" Liz shrugged, checking her pendant, a finely crafted copper star that gleamed softly even under the moon. More like people who've been waiting for someone to ask the right questions. There are others out there scattered across the country, maybe the world. Researchers, historians, even skeptics who've stumbled on pieces of the puzzle. I couldn't help but joke to lighten the mood. So we're forming the Tartarian Avengers. Should I start looking for a cape? She laughed, the sound warm and genuine in the chilly night. Maybe just a sturdy pair of boots. Before we could plan our next move, a sudden noise shattered the quiet. A figure stepping out from the shadows. Tall, cloaked, with eyes that gleamed like polished obsidian. You two, the stranger said, voice low and commanding, are playing a dangerous game. Liz tensed but didn't back down. And you are? A friend. For now, the figure replied, pulling back their hood to reveal a face lined with years of secrets and a knowing smile. My name is Henry. I've been tracking the same thread you have. I exchanged a glance with Liz. This was no coincidence. Henry stepped closer, producing a small leather-bound journal. Inside, you'll find records, notes from those who dared to dig deeper. But be warned, the truth comes at a price. Liz took the journal carefully, her fingers brushing against mine briefly. The weight of it was heavier than the leather suggested, as if the past itself rested between those pages. Where do we start? I asked, suddenly feeling the gravity of the path ahead. Henry's eyes darkened. We start with the map. Not the ones you've seen, but the original, the one that traces the veins of Tartaria's hidden network. It's here in England, but guarded by those who fear what it reveals. A cold wind swept through the courtyard, lifting fallen leaves in a swirling dance. I shivered, but not from the cold. We're not just chasing history, Liz said quietly. We're chasing a legacy, one that someone desperately wants to bury. As the city's distant lights flickered, I knew there was no turning back. Somewhere beneath the streets, the secrets of Tartaria were waiting, for us, for the world to uncover. But as I looked into Henry's eyes, I couldn't shake the feeling that the real danger was only just beginning. The leather-bound journal felt heavier in my hands than it should have, as if it carried the weight of centuries. Henry's gaze was steady, but there was something almost haunted in his eyes, like a man who'd seen too much and yet knew there was even more lurking, just beyond the edges of understanding. We don't have much time, Henry said, his voice low. The people hunting you, they're connected to something larger, an organization that's been erasing Tartaria's trace for centuries. They control archives, museums, even governments. They don't just want to hide the past, they want to shape the future. Liz nodded grimly, her copper star pendant catching the moonlight like a beacon. That's why we need to find the map first. It's the key to everything. The locations of other hidden chambers, energy nodes, and perhaps even technology that could rewrite history. I stared at the journal's worn cover, then opened it carefully. Inside were sketches, cryptic notes, and faded photographs. Some of the very ruins I'd seen, others of places I'd never heard of. There were references to the grid, the giant's legacy, and the mud flood. All terms that suddenly felt less like conspiracy and more like warnings. Henry pulled out a folded parchment from his coat and spread it on the cracked stone table of the courtyard. It was a map, hand-drawn, with ink faded, but lines still sharp. At first glance, it looked like any old map of England, but closer inspection revealed something extraordinary. The map marked an intricate pattern of interconnected sites, ancient churches, manor houses, and even some industrial-era buildings, all linked by lines that formed a geometric web overlaying the landscape. At the center was a symbol I recognized from the chamber below London, a star with radiating copper points. Liz traced a finger along one of the lines. These aren't just buildings. They're nodes in the energy network, the remnants of Tartaria's power grid. If we can access enough of them, we might be able to reactivate parts of the system. I blinked. You mean tap into some kind of wireless energy? Like free power? Exactly, Henry said, a rare smile breaking through his grave demeanor. Which is why they want it destroyed. The implications are enormous. Imagine a world without energy monopolies, without fossil fuels, without the need to pay for power. It would change everything. I couldn't help but joke, my nerves tingling with excitement and fear. So we're basically the world's most reluctant superheroes, fighting evil overlords armed with history books and copper coils? Liz laughed softly, then grew serious again. This is bigger than us, bigger than just a secret society or a lost empire. It's about who controls the future. Henry folded the map carefully. Our first stop is a place called Ashwell Manor, a few miles north of Cambridge. It's said to house one of the largest surviving Tartarian nodes. But be warned, it's heavily guarded, both by physical security and what some call protective forces. My mind raced with questions, but Liz's determined look said it all. We were already in too deep. As we prepared to move, a sudden chill swept through the courtyard. The copper star around Liz's neck glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with the hum I still felt deep in my bones. Whatever happens next, Liz said, eyes locking with mine, we're not just uncovering history, we're waking a giant that's been sleeping for centuries. And somewhere, far above us, the city lights flickered, as if responding to a call only we could hear. I took a deep breath. Let's go wake that giant. The drive to Ashwell Manor was cloaked in twilight, the English countryside rolling past in muted greens and grays, as if nature itself was holding its breath. Liz sat beside me, her eyes sharp behind the windshield, fingers tapping a restless rhythm on the steering wheel. Henry was in the back seat, poring over the journal, occasionally muttering phrases I couldn't quite catch. Ashwell Manor appeared suddenly, a hulking silhouette against the darkening sky. Its stone walls were covered in creeping ivy, and towering copper spires jutted from the rooftops like fingers pointing accusingly at the heavens. The manor's gates were iron-wrought masterpieces, adorned with curling motifs that reminded me of those strange antenna-like structures we'd seen underground. Liz killed the engine, and we sat in silence. The only sound the distant hoot of an owl and the soft rustle of autumn leaves. I glanced over at her, the curve of her jaw caught in the fading light, her dark green jacket zipped up against the chill, boots slightly scuffed from the day's trek. There was a fierce determination in her gaze, mixed with a hint of something more vulnerable. Honestly, she looked like someone who could wrestle a bear and still make it to a cocktail party on time. Henry broke the silence. They've installed new surveillance since the last time I was here. Motion sensors, infrared cameras. The works. We'll need a distraction. I raised an eyebrow. And I suppose you have a brilliant plan cooked up? Liz smiled slyly. Something like that. But first we need to get inside. We slipped out of the car and moved toward the manor's perimeter under cover of darkness. The ground was soft beneath our feet, damp from an earlier drizzle, and the scent of wet earth mingled with the faint metallic tang that seemed to follow us like a shadow. Liz pulled out a small device from her jacket, a sleek black box with blinking lights. This'll jam their sensors for a few minutes, enough for us to get through the south wing. We crept along the manor's outer wall, avoiding pools of moonlight. The air grew thick with anticipation, every creak of the old building amplified in the night. Suddenly, a faint hum resonated from the ground beneath us, a vibration so subtle it could have been dismissed as the manor settling. But I felt it deep in my bones, Tartaria's heartbeat. Inside, the manor was a labyrinth of grand halls and shadowed corridors. The walls were lined with faded tapestries, depicting scenes of colossal figures wielding strange devices, their eyes gleaming with an otherworldly light. The floors creaked beneath our feet, the air heavy with dust and secrets. We reached a massive oak door, its surface etched with the same star-shaped symbols from the map. Liz placed her hand on the cold wood, and the door responded, sliding open with a low mechanical groan to reveal a chamber bathed in the soft glow of phosphorescent crystals. At the center stood a massive console, an intricate mosaic of copper wires, crystal arrays, and stone panels covered in mysterious glyphs. The room pulsed with latent energy, as if waiting for a spark to ignite it. Liz stepped forward, her fingers dancing over the controls. This is it, the node. If we can reactivate it, even partially, we might restore a link in the network. Henry hovered nearby, consulting the journal. Be careful. Last time someone tampered with this, The entire manor was rocked by a series of unexplained tremors. I couldn't resist. So basically, don't press the big red button? Liz shot me a look. No big red buttons, just ancient tech that might be smarter than us. She connected a small device to the console, and the chamber shuddered to life. Lights flickered, gears spun silently beneath the stone surface, and a low hum filled the air. The crystals glowed brighter, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Suddenly, a sharp alarm pierced the silence. Red lights flashed, and distant footsteps echoed through the manor. "Visitors," Liz muttered, eyes narrowing. "We've been spotted." The door slammed shut behind us, locking automatically. The temperature dropped, and the hum of the node shifted, becoming more urgent, almost frantic. "We've triggered a defense mechanism," Henry said, panic creeping into his voice. "We need to shut it down or we're trapped." Liz's fingers flew over the controls, trying to decipher the ancient interface. The symbols rearranged themselves under her touch, like a puzzle demanding to be solved. Time was running out. Outside, the footsteps grew louder, and a shadow appeared beneath the door's narrow window. I swallowed hard and whispered, "Looks like the Tartarian Avengers just got a new mission. Escape." Liz glanced at me, a fierce smile breaking through the tension. "And we're only just getting started." The air inside the chamber grew colder, heavy with an electric charge that made my skin prickle. Liz's fingers moved faster over the ancient console, her eyes darting between the glowing symbols and the flickering lights. The hum of the node had shifted into a low, urgent pulse, like a heartbeat racing toward collapse. Outside, the footsteps were no longer distant. They were pounding against the stone corridors, echoing closer with every second. The door's lock mechanism clicked ominously, sealing our fate if we didn't act fast. Henry leaned in, his voice tight with tension. "The defense system is designed to trap intruders until the node stabilizes, or destroys itself. We have minutes, maybe less." I swallowed hard, watching the sweat bead on Liz's brow despite the chill. "So what's the plan? Because I'm fresh out of magic spells." Liz shot me a sideways glance, lips twitching in a half smile. "Not magic. Just old-fashioned problem-solving and a bit of luck." She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small copper rod, etched with symbols matching the ones glowing on the console. "This is a key, a piece of the original Tartarian tech. It should interface directly with the node's core." Henry nodded. "If she's right, it might bypass the defense protocols and stabilize the system." With a steady hand, Liz inserted the rod into a narrow slot at the center of the console. The room trembled as the node responded. Lights flared, the humming intensified, and the glowing symbols rearranged themselves into a new pattern. Suddenly, the door lock released with a metallic clunk, and the pounding footsteps halted outside, replaced by a tense silence. "We're not out of the woods yet," Liz warned, eyes fixed on the console. "But the node is waking up." A soft vibration pulsed through the floor, and the chamber walls shimmered, revealing faint outlines of ancient maps and energy grids projected in crystalline light. It was like stepping into a three-dimensional blueprint of Tartaria's lost network. I reached out, mesmerized by the intricate web of connections spanning continents and oceans. "So all this really existed. It's not just legend." Liz's voice softened. "It's real. And it's still alive." Henry pointed to a cluster of nodes marked in England and beyond. "If we can reactivate enough of these, we could restore at least part of the network. Free energy, knowledge, maybe even more." Suddenly the silence shattered with a harsh crack, the sound of glass breaking somewhere deeper in the manor. "We don't have much time," Liz said, urgency sharpening her tone. "They're coming." We gathered what equipment we could carry, maps, tools, and the copper rod, and slipped out of the chamber just as the manor's ancient alarm system roared back to life. The corridors were alive with movement, figures clad in dark gear, their faces obscured, closing in with ruthless efficiency. We darted through shadowed passages, the scent of damp stone and old secrets thick in the air. At one point, Liz paused, her eyes catching a faint glow beneath a crack in the wall. She pressed her hand to the stone, and a hidden panel slid open, revealing a narrow escape tunnel. "We'll have to trust this," she said, leading the way into the darkness. The tunnel was tight, claustrophobic, but it opened into a forgotten garden bathed in moonlight. The scent of wet earth and wildflowers was a balm after the suffocating stone. As we caught our breath, I looked at Liz. Her dark hair tangled, cheeks flushed, but eyes blazing with resolve. "Whatever this Tartaria was," I said, "it's more than just a lost empire. It's a legacy, and maybe a warning." Liz nodded. "And we've only scratched the surface." Behind us, the manor's lights flickered, shadows stretching long and ominous. Ahead, the night held secrets waiting to be uncovered, and dangers we hadn't yet imagined. But for the first time since this journey began, I felt something else. Hope. Because sometimes to find the truth buried beneath centuries of lies, you have to be willing to walk through the dark. And in that darkness, the heartbeat of an ancient giant was calling us forward. The question was, were we ready to answer? The cool night air wrapped around us as we slipped through the tangled hedges of the forgotten garden, the moon casting silver streaks across Liz's determined face. Her jacket was dusted with dirt, and a stray lock of hair clung to her cheek, but her eyes burned with a fierce light that made it impossible to look away. I felt an odd mix of admiration and something deeper, a magnetic pull that seemed to grow stronger with every step we took away from Ashwell Manor. Henry was just ahead, clutching the leather-bound journal like a lifeline, his breath steady despite the chaos we left behind. "We need to find the next node," he said quietly, glancing back to make sure we weren't followed. "There's one in the town of Ely, a place known for its cathedral, but beneath that, the Tartarian grid runs deep." I laughed softly, trying to break the tension. "So next stop, Ely. Sounds like a lovely tourist spot for ancient giant tech." Liz smiled, but there was a shadow in her eyes. "Tourists don't usually wander into cathedrals at midnight, digging through crypts. We'll need to be careful." The journey north was a blur of dark country roads and whispered conversations. The map Henry carried was a patchwork of old parchment and modern annotations, guiding us toward forgotten places that didn't appear on tourist brochures. Each stop promised new pieces of the puzzle and new dangers. When we arrived in Ely, the cathedral loomed above us like a stone giant, its spires piercing the night sky, copper roofs gleaming faintly in the moonlight. It was breathtaking, all Gothic arches and intricate carvings. But I couldn't shake the feeling that beneath its beauty lay secrets as vast and mysterious as Tartaria itself. Liz led us to a side entrance, a small iron-wrought door hidden behind overgrown ivy. She produced a set of old keys, worn and tarnished, and with a soft click, the door creaked open. Inside, the air was cool and heavy with incense and age. The cathedral's vast interior stretched upward, stained glass windows casting fragmented colors onto the stone floor. But Liz's gaze was fixed downward, toward a trap door concealed beneath a faded tapestry. With a grunt, she pushed it open, revealing a spiral staircase descending into darkness. As we climbed down, the scent of damp earth and ancient stone filled my nostrils. The walls here were lined with carvings, figures of giants intertwined with symbols of stars and copper coils, mirroring the patterns we'd seen before. At the bottom, we entered a vast underground chamber, its ceiling vaulted and supported by immense stone columns, carved with mysterious glyphs. At the center stood a massive copper dome, its surface etched with concentric circles and geometric patterns that seemed to pulse faintly with unseen energy. Liz approached the dome, her fingers tracing the intricate designs. "This is another node," she whispered, "part of the network that once powered the entire continent." Henry consulted the journal, flipping to a page marked with a faded red cross. "If we can reactivate this, it might restore a link in the grid, sending a signal that could awaken others." I felt a thrill mixed with fear. "And if we fail?" Liz's eyes met mine, steady and unflinching. "Then we're trapped in the past forever, buried beneath lies and silence." As she began working on the dome, a faint vibration filled the chamber, the same hum that had become our constant companion. The walls seemed to lean in, alive with the memory of power long forgotten. Suddenly, the ground trembled violently. Dust and small stones rained from the ceiling, and a low resonant roar echoed through the tunnels. "We're not alone," Henry said, voice tight. "Something's waking up." The copper dome pulsed brighter, casting eerie shadows that danced like spirits across the walls. The air thickened, charged with energy and anticipation. Liz's hands moved swiftly, connecting the copper coils and activating the ancient mechanisms. The hum swelled into a triumphant chorus, a song of light and power that filled the chamber. But outside, in the dark streets of Ely, shadows stirred, and somewhere, hidden in the silence, eyes watched and waited. The awakening had begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. The moment the copper dome blazed to life, a shockwave rippled through the underground chamber, vibrating through stone and earth with a force that made my teeth chatter. Liz's hands trembled slightly as she held on to the ancient controls, eyes wide with a mix of triumph and apprehension. The hum grew louder, then fractured into a series of sharp, crystalline tones that echoed like a symphony from another world. Above us, the city of Ely seemed to shudder in response. Streetlights flickered, distant church bells tolled without cause, and somewhere far away, a power station tripped offline. It was as if the ancient network was reaching out, stretching its long-forgotten limbs beneath the modern world. Henry leaned close, voice barely a whisper. "We've done it. We've reawakened a piece of Tartaria's heart." I glanced at Liz, whose copper pendant now glowed brightly, pulsing in time with the dome's rhythm. There was a strange beauty to the moment, a sense that we'd touched something sacred and dangerous. But then came the warning. A sudden, piercing alarm shattered the chamber's fragile peace. The walls vibrated violently, dust and debris falling from the vaulted ceiling. The floor beneath us trembled like a living beast disturbed from slumber. Liz cursed under her breath. "They're coming." The Guardians. From the shadows, figures emerged, tall, imposing, draped in dark cloaks embroidered with symbols that shimmered like starlight. Their eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the dome's eerie light. They moved with unnatural grace, silent but unstoppable. "We've awakened more than just machines," Henry said grimly. "We've stirred the protectors of Tartaria's legacy." The Guardians advanced, and the air thickened with an almost tangible energy, electric and ancient. Liz grabbed my arm, pulling me toward a narrow passage hidden behind a collapsed wall. "We have to move, now," she urged. We sprinted through twisting tunnels, the Guardians' footsteps echoing relentlessly behind us. The walls seemed to close in, ancient glyphs glowing faintly as if alive with warning. As we burst into the cool night air, the cathedral's spires loomed overhead, silent witnesses to the centuries-old secret now breaking free. I looked at Liz, breathless and exhilarated. "What now? We've stirred the past, but have we sealed our fate?" She smiled, fierce and fearless. "No, we've opened a door, and now it's up to us to walk through it." Henry held up the journal, its pages fluttering in the wind. "The network is awakening worldwide. Tartaria's legacy is returning, not just in ruins, but in power." I shivered, feeling the weight of what lay ahead. The world we knew was shifting beneath our feet, the secrets buried for centuries clawing their way back into the light. And somewhere deep beneath the earth, the giants were waking. The mystery of Tartaria was no longer a forgotten legend. It was a living, breathing force, and the next chapter was just beginning.